The morning air around Washington, D.C. felt unusually heavy. Reporters had gathered outside the tall courthouse before the sun had even risen, their cameras lined up, microphones in hand, waiting for something big to happen. The city was already used to scandals and hearings, but this one felt different. The sight of so many people, some holding signs, some whispering in disbelief, gave away that this was not an ordinary case. Inside, the sound of footsteps echoed through the long marble hallway. The tension in the air was so thick that even the smallest noise felt amplified. In one of the upper floors, a courtroom filled slowly with lawyers, journalists, and curious onlookers who had managed to secure seats. At the center of all the attention sat Hillary Clinton, calm but visibly tense, her eyes scanning the room with quiet focus. For months, rumors had spread about new developments in an old case, one involving the use of private servers and confidential files. Many thought it was over years ago, but now new evidence had brought everything back to life. Some believed it was a political move. Others said it was finally time for truth. No matter what people thought, everyone knew this case could change how the public viewed not just politics, but power itself. The judge entered the room, serious and composed. Everyone stood up as the sound of the gavel struck once, echoing sharply. The cameras outside flashed again and again as word spread that the hearing had officially begun. The energy inside the courtroom was electric. Hilary sat beside her legal team, her face unreadable. She had faced many storms in her long career, but this one felt different. There were whispers that new digital evidence had surfaced, data that might link her to something deeper. Yet no one had seen it clearly. Even her team wasn't sure what exactly the prosecutors had discovered. The lead prosecutor stood, buttoned his coat, and started reading through a file. His tone was cold, confident. He spoke of emails, files, and data stored in encrypted formats that had recently been uncovered. He claimed they proved wrongdoing. The defense quickly objected, saying that digital files can be easily manipulated and that nothing should be accepted without a full review. The judge agreed to hear both sides before making any decision. The crowd inside the room sat perfectly still. Every word felt like a drop of water in a silent cave. Then something unexpected happened. A man in a gray suit entered quietly through the side door, escorted by court officials. The moment he appeared, heads turned. Whispers began spreading like wildfire across the room. Even the reporters who had been busy typing suddenly froze mid-sentence. It was Elon Musk. No one had expected to see him there. Rumors had already been floating outside the courthouse earlier that morning that Musk was somehow connected to the evidence, but no one took it seriously. Some thought it was just another online rumor trying to link famous people to anything newsworthy. But there he was, walking calmly to the reserved seat behind the legal benches, his expression neutral but observant. The judge glanced at him for a brief moment but said nothing. Hilary looked over her shoulder, confusion flickering in her eyes. Her lawyers whispered among themselves, unsure what his presence meant. The prosecutor, trying to appear unfazed, continued presenting his argument, though his voice lost a bit of its sharp edge. As the hearing went on, the digital evidence was displayed on the courtroom screen. It showed complex data, email traces, file logs, and encrypted strings that the prosecutor claimed pointed back to a server under Clinton's control. The technical language was heavy, and most of the audience didn't understand much of it. But one thing was clear. The data seemed to suggest something hidden. Then came the moment that would change everything. Musk quietly stood up and spoke to one of the court officers. A note was passed to the judge. The judge read it and paused, raising an eyebrow. The room grew still again. "Mr. Musk," the judge said, his tone cautious but curious. "I understand you wish to make a statement related to the evidence presented?" Every camera turned toward him. Musk nodded slightly. His voice was calm but carried a weight that demanded attention. He explained that he had not come as a supporter of either side, but because his security team at one of his companies had detected unusual cyber activity months earlier, activity that matched some of the same data, patterns now being presented in court. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. Reporters began scribbling notes furiously. The judge tapped his gavel to restore silence. Musk went on to explain that his engineers, while investigating a hacking attempt on one of his company's networks, had discovered suspicious data signatures that traced back to the same digital trail now being discussed. He said that they had preserved the data, time-stamped and verified it through independent cybersecurity experts. He wasn't accusing anyone, he said, but the files currently used as evidence seemed to have been altered. That word, altered, hung in the air. Hilary's legal team exchanged glances, their posture suddenly shifting from defensive to alert. The prosecutor looked unsettled. The judge leaned forward slightly, interested. The judge asked Musk if he could provide proof of what he was saying. Musk nodded again. He turned to his aide, who carried a small encrypted drive and a few printed documents. The clerk received them carefully and handed them to the judge. The hearing paused for several minutes as the technical team reviewed the documents. No one spoke. You could feel the tension in the air, the quiet hum of curiosity mixed with disbelief. Musk remained seated, his expression calm, almost detached. Finally, the judge looked up and spoke, his voice more measured now. It appears Mr. Musk's team has submitted credible verification, records suggesting that portions of the presented evidence may have been manipulated or altered. Post-transfer. The entire courtroom reacted at once. Some gasped. Others started whispering. Reporters outside began typing frantically, sending messages to their editors. Hilary's lawyer took a deep breath, then stood. Your Honor, in light of this revelation, we request that all current evidence be temporarily suspended until independent verification can be completed. The judge nodded. That request will be considered. The prosecutor tried to object, arguing that Musk's claims needed further validation. But it was clear that the judge's confidence had shifted. Something about Musk's quiet certainty had changed the rhythm of the hearing. Meanwhile, outside the courthouse, the crowd had grown restless. News outlets began broadcasting live updates. Elon Musk intervenes in Clinton hearing became the headline across every major platform. People debated furiously online, some claiming Musk was defending truth, others saying he was trying to draw attention, but no one could deny that his presence had completely altered the mood of the case. Inside, the judge decided to adjourn the session for the day to allow experts to examine Musk's data. Before leaving, he looked directly at Musk. Mr. Musk, he said, your contribution today has raised serious questions. I will request that your team remain available for further inquiry. Musk nodded once and quietly left the courtroom, avoiding reporters who tried to chase him for comments. Hilary sat still for a long moment. For the first time in weeks, there was a faint glimmer of relief in her eyes. She didn't smile, but her shoulders relaxed. Her lawyer leaned over and whispered something that made her nod slowly. They knew things had just changed dramatically. The prosecutors, meanwhile, looked shaken. They quickly gathered their files, whispering to each other, clearly not expecting their strongest piece of evidence to be questioned so suddenly. As people started leaving the courtroom, conversations broke out everywhere. Some wondered if Musk's involvement was a coincidence, while others suspected he had known something much earlier and had waited for the right time. Whatever the truth was, everyone agreed that this was no longer the same trial. That night, the news channels ran continuous coverage. Analysts argued on live television about whether Musk had saved Clinton or simply complicated an already messy case. Former officials debated the implications, while legal experts discussed how digital data can be both powerful and dangerous in the courtroom. In the midst of all that noise, Musk stayed silent. He didn't tweet, didn't issue any statement. His office simply confirmed that he had provided technical clarification regarding data authenticity at the request of the court. But people who had seen him in the courtroom knew it was more than just technical clarification. It was a quiet earthquake that had shaken the foundation of the entire case. Somewhere late that night, in a quiet office, Clinton sat by herself, reading the headlines. The glow of the monitor lit her face as she scrolled through articles, all mentioning the same thing, Elon Musk's unexpected move. She knew the fight wasn't over, but for the first time in a while, she felt like maybe the truth still had a chance to surface. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Musk met with his cybersecurity team. The engineers had been working nonstop, verifying every timestamp, every digital trace, making sure nothing was misrepresented. Musk leaned over the table, studying the data on a large screen. This has to be perfect, he said quietly. We can't afford even a small mistake. He wasn't interested in politics. For him, it was about the integrity of technology, about proving that data could tell the truth if handled correctly. The irony wasn't lost on him. The very tools meant to bring clarity to the world had become the instruments of confusion and more. The following morning, the courthouse steps were even more crowded than before. Reporters pushed against the barricades, cameras flashed endlessly, and the air buzzed with speculation. Overnight, the story of Elon Musk stepping into the courtroom had spread like wildfire. Every channel, every website, and every social platform was filled with clips of the moment he stood up and handed the judge that small encrypted drive. For some, Musk had become an unexpected hero who cared about truth. For others, his move was confusing and suspicious. People argued about his intentions. Was he trying to protect Hilary? Was he standing for justice? Or was he simply drawn to the chaos that surrounded power and politics? No one knew for sure. Inside the courthouse, Hilary arrived quietly, escorted by her security team. She wore the same calm expression as the day before, though anyone who looked closely could tell she hadn't slept much. The previous day's shock had left her both relieved and uneasy. Musk's revelation had given her case a new direction, but it also raised new questions. If the evidence was tampered with, who was behind it and why? As she took her seat, she noticed the press area buzzing again. Musk wasn't there yet, but rumors said he would return. Even the judge had hinted at another appearance. The thought made everyone restless. The courtroom felt alive, almost as if the walls themselves were waiting to see what would happen next. When the judge entered, the room fell silent. He greeted the court with a measured voice and announced that independent experts had reviewed Musk's data overnight. Their findings confirmed what Musk had claimed. The original files used as evidence showed clear signs of modification. The judge's tone was calm but carried a weight that made everyone lean forward. He paused, looking around the room before continuing. "The court acknowledges that data authenticity has been compromised," he said. "This development changes the direction of this hearing. Further investigation will be necessary." Hilary's lawyers exchanged relieved looks. The prosecutors, however, were not ready to back down. The lead prosecutor stood up immediately, adjusting his glasses with a sharp motion. He insisted that even if the data was altered, the origin of the information still pointed toward Hilary's private servers. The issue, he said, wasn't whether the data was changed, but why she had such files in the first place. The defense objected, calling the statement misleading. They reminded the court that no one could determine what was real or fake until the full digital trail was examined. The judge agreed and ordered that both sides share all remaining data with Musk's technical team for neutral analysis. That was the first time a sitting judge had ever asked a private citizen, especially someone as famous as Musk, to collaborate officially in a high-profile political case. Within minutes, the courtroom transformed from a battle of words to a discussion about technology and truth. Musk arrived halfway through, walking in quietly again, wearing the same calm look. This time, however, everyone stood when he entered, as if instinctively acknowledging that his presence carried weight. The judge nodded to him, and Musk sat beside a federal data specialist who would work with him during the review. Hilary glanced at him once, her eyes meeting his for a brief second. There was no smile, no exchange of words, but in that moment, there seemed to be an unspoken understanding. He wasn't there to save her, but his honesty might end up doing just that. The day's hearing focused on reviewing the digital trail. Large screens showed complex diagrams of data flow, arrows, servers, timestamps. It looked like a map of invisible connections, a web of numbers and codes stretching across the world. Musk's team worked quietly, typing rapidly, while the court watched in silence. Hours passed. The courtroom, once full of restless whispers, had gone completely still. Finally, Musk leaned over to the microphone. His tone was calm but confident. "We've confirmed that at least 3 versions of the same files exist," he said. "The one submitted as evidence is the most recent, and it doesn't match the original metadata." He explained in simple terms that the timestamps and encryption patterns had been modified, which meant someone had tampered with the files after their creation. But the interesting part was that the alterations were done with extreme precision, using tools that only a handful of advanced networks could access. The judge asked, "So are you saying this manipulation was professional?" Musk nodded slightly. "Very professional," he replied. Not the kind of work an individual could do alone. It's the kind of operation that leaves almost no trace unless you know exactly where to look. The prosecutor stood, clearly irritated. Mr. Musk, are you implying that an outside group interfered with federal evidence? I'm not implying anything, Musk said evenly. I'm showing you what the data says. Digital trails don't have opinions, they just exist. His calm answer made the room murmur again. Even the judge seemed intrigued by the balance of confidence and humility in his tone. It wasn't arrogance. It was the certainty of someone who trusted numbers more than words. By the time the hearing adjourned for lunch, the world outside had already exploded with speculation. News anchors analyzed every sentence Musk had said. Commentators tried to decode his motives. Was he protecting democracy or just exposing flaws in the justice system? The public couldn't decide. Back inside during the break, Hilary sat quietly in a small room behind the courtroom. Her lawyer spoke in a low tone, explaining that this new development might finally shift public opinion. He's giving you space to breathe, her lawyer said. But we need to be careful. This isn't over. Hilary nodded slowly, staring at the table. I know, she said softly. But whoever did this, they wanted this to happen. They wanted me to look guilty. At the same time, in another corner of the courthouse, Musk was having a private conversation with the federal data specialists. They discussed the strange pattern behind the tampered files. One of them pointed out that the data trail didn't just stop at domestic servers. It extended overseas. Musk frowned. That wasn't something the court could easily address. But it raised an important question. Who had the resources to alter evidence at such a deep level? When the hearing resumed after lunch, the atmosphere was heavier. The judge asked Musk to summarize his team's ongoing findings for the official record. Musk stood again and explained that while the data manipulation was confirmed, there were still gaps in the trail. His tone remained neutral, but his words carried quiet weight. There are missing links, he said. Someone removed portions of the digital logs. We're reconstructing them, but it will take time. The prosecutor tried to question his expertise, suggesting that even advanced systems could be wrong. Musk smiled faintly, not as mockery, but as if amused by the simplicity of the argument. Computers don't take sides, he replied. But people do, and when they do, it shows in the code. The judge called for a recess, allowing both teams to regroup. The moment the gavel struck, the courtroom burst into noise again. People whispered, cameras clicked, and reporters rushed outside to share updates. The story had taken another twist. By evening, the city's skyline glowed under orange light. News vans lined the streets, and crowds gathered around big screens showing live coverage. Musk left the courthouse quietly, surrounded by his staff. Reporters shouted questions. He didn't answer any of them. He simply walked to his car, expression calm, eyes distant as if already thinking 10 steps ahead. Later that night, in his hotel suite, Musk sat by the window overlooking the city. His phone buzzed constantly with messages, but he ignored them. Instead, he stared out at the lights, thinking about how strange it was that technology, something he had dedicated his life to advancing, was now at the center of a courtroom battle about truth. Down the street, in another building, Hilary and her lawyers worked late, reviewing every piece of correspondence that had been used against her. They knew the next session would be crucial. The world had started to doubt the case, but they needed more than doubt. They needed clarity. As the clock ticked past midnight, one of Musk's engineers called him, excited. They had discovered something new. The altered files contained embedded metadata that pointed to a different server, one not listed in the original case. It was subtle, almost hidden, but the pattern was unmistakable. Musk listened carefully. Can you trace it? He asked. Partially, the engineer said. It's routed through multiple layers, but it looks like the first signal came from outside the country. Musk didn't respond right away. He stared out the window again, the reflection of the city lights flickering across his face. Save everything, he said finally. Tomorrow we'll present it. The next morning, the courthouse felt even tenser. Reporters whispered that Musk's team had uncovered something new overnight. The buzz was so strong that even the judge noticed it when he entered. The hearing began, and Musk stepped forward once again. He explained what his engineers had found, a small but significant trace of data leading to an unknown foreign server. The implication was clear. Someone outside the case had been involved. The judge asked for clarification, and Musk explained with his usual calm tone, "This isn't about politics. It's about control. Someone wanted this data to look a certain way." That simple sentence echoed through the courtroom. It wasn't emotional, but it carried deep meaning. For the first time, the focus shifted away from Hilary entirely and toward the bigger question. The courtroom was filled again the next morning, but this time the atmosphere felt completely different. The tension that once revolved around Hilary had now shifted toward something much larger. The focus was no longer only on what she might have done, but on who had been working behind the scenes to twist the story. The night before, Musk's team had discovered traces of data leading outside the country, and now everyone wanted to know who was behind it. Reporters lined up early, their breath visible in the cool morning air. Some had camped outside all night, waiting for any new update. Inside the courthouse, lawyers moved quickly, carrying thick folders and murmuring in hushed voices. Even the security guards seemed more alert than usual. Everyone could sense that this hearing would be different. Something big was about to unfold. Hilary entered quietly, wearing a gray coat and dark glasses. Her steps were slow but steady. For the first time, she looked less defensive and more curious. The air around her felt lighter, though she was careful not to show relief. Her lawyer leaned in and whispered something, but she only nodded and kept her gaze straight ahead. Musk arrived a few minutes later. The moment he stepped inside, the quiet murmur in the room faded. Cameras flashed, pens stopped moving, and all eyes followed him as he took his seat beside the federal data specialists. He carried a small black folder. Nothing fancy, but it seemed to hold more weight than any pile of legal papers in the room. The judge entered, and the session began. The sound of the gavel cut through the silence like thunder. "This court will now continue with the examination of newly presented evidence," he said. "Mr. Musk, you may proceed." Musk stood, unfolding a single sheet of paper from his folder. His voice was calm, deliberate. "Your Honor, after further analysis, our team traced the digital fingerprints of the altered files to a network that operates through international data channels. The original manipulation began outside the United States. The pattern of encryption used is unique, belonging to a specific system known for high-level interference." He paused, letting the words sink in. The courtroom went silent. Even the sound of typing stopped. The judge leaned forward. "Are you suggesting that the evidence was not only altered, but done so by a foreign network?" "Yes," Musk said plainly. "The signals trace back to multiple servers, but the starting point isn't domestic. Someone wanted these files to appear authentic while hiding their true origin." Hilary's lawyer stood immediately, asking to have Musk's findings entered into the record. The prosecutor objected, claiming it was premature. But the judge overruled him, stating that any credible findings relevant to truth must be heard. For the next hour, Musk presented charts and code traces. He explained how digital fingerprints work, how even when a file is copied, moved, or altered, it leaves invisible marks behind, like footprints in sand. "Every system has a signature," he said. "The more advanced the manipulation, the clearer the pattern becomes once you know where to look." The courtroom listened closely, even those who didn't understand much about technology. Musk's tone was calm, but his message carried emotion. It wasn't about politics for him, it was about integrity. He wasn't there to defend anyone personally. He was there to defend truth from distortion. At one point, the prosecutor interrupted. "Mr. Musk, why involve yourself in this matter at all? You're not part of the government. You're not a lawyer. Why take this risk?" Musk looked at him for a moment before replying softly, "Because I have the tools to see what others can't. And when truth is buried under lies, it becomes everyone's responsibility to uncover it." His answer drew quiet murmurs from the audience. Even the judge nodded slightly, as if appreciating the simplicity of his conviction. Hilary sat silently through all of this, her hands clasped together. She had faced many accusations in her life, but never like this. For the first time, it wasn't about speeches or public image. It was about data, invisible trails of truth that no one could spin. She realized how much the world had changed. In this new age, a person's fate could be decided by a few lines of digital code. As the day went on, Musk's team revealed something even more surprising. One of the altered files contained a hidden code signature from an unknown source, almost like a watermark left behind by whoever tampered with it. The code didn't match any known domestic systems. Musk's voice grew quieter as he explained it, aware of the weight of what he was saying. Someone wanted to create confusion, he said. They wanted both sides to believe they had the truth when neither did. The judge called for a short recess. People poured out of the courtroom, their conversations echoing through the hallways. Outside news outlets went wild. Headlines appeared within minutes. Foreign hack suspected in Clinton case. Musk reveals hidden source in digital tampering. Courtroom drama deepens. The story had moved beyond politics. It was now about a global game of deception. During the break, Musk sat quietly in a small side room, going over notes with his engineers. His expression was thoughtful. One of them asked if he thought this would clear Hilary completely. Musk shook his head. It's not about clearing anyone, he said. It's about finding out who thought they could rewrite history through technology. Back in the courtroom, the session resumed. The prosecutor tried to regain control, focusing again on the fact that some files had still originated from Hilary's private servers. But Musk pointed out that having a server didn't mean creating fake data. The real question was who altered it and why. The judge listened carefully, his expression unreadable. Hours passed before the judge finally announced that further investigation would be handed over to a special digital task force, working alongside Musk's team. The courtroom buzzed with excitement. It was rare for the court to authorize private experts to collaborate with government investigators, but this case was far from ordinary. As everyone began to leave, Hilary turned slightly toward Musk. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and though no words were exchanged, the look said everything. Gratitude, curiosity, and maybe even a touch of disbelief that someone she had barely known could change the entire course of her life in just a few days. Outside, the media swarmed again. Cameras surrounded Musk as he exited the courthouse. One reporter shouted, "Mr. Musk, are you saying there's a global conspiracy behind this?" Musk stopped, looked at the crowd, and said simply, "I'm saying that truth doesn't need permission. It only needs light." Then he walked away, his security guiding him through the chaos. The clip of that single line would later be replayed on every major channel across the country. That evening, Washington buzzed with speculation. In coffee shops, restaurants, and online forums, people argued about what had just happened. Some praised Musk for standing up for fairness. Others accused him of interfering in a political case. But deep down, everyone knew that something bigger was at play. Something that reached far beyond one courtroom or one person. Meanwhile, in her hotel room, Hilary sat near the window, watching the city lights flicker. Her lawyer sat across from her, reading through notes. "This changes everything," he said quietly. "It does," she replied, her voice steady but thoughtful. "But it also shows how easily things can be twisted. If it happened to me, it can happen to anyone." She leaned back in her chair, exhausted. The noise outside faded into the distance, replaced by a long silence. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to feel something like hope, not just for herself, but for the truth. Across the city, Musk's team worked late again. Screens glowed in the dim light of the lab as lines of code scrolled endlessly. The engineers traced signals, looking for the exact point of origin. One of them looked up from the monitor. "We've got something," he said. The first signal came from a masked IP inside an old communications node, one that hasn't been active in years. Musk leaned over the screen, studying the trace. His expression tightened. "Someone revived a dead network just to send this data," he said. "Whoever it is, they're good." The room went silent for a moment before Musk added softly, "but not invisible." The next morning, when the judge reconvened the hearing, Musk asked for permission to present one final update. The judge allowed it. He stepped forward and explained how the origin of the tampered data was linked to an inactive network once used by international contractors years ago. The trail was still under investigation, but it was now undeniable that someone had carefully planted false evidence. The courtroom was silent again. The prosecutor didn't speak. Even the reporters stopped writing for a moment. The judge finally spoke, his voice steady but serious. "This court acknowledges that a full-scale external manipulation has taken place. Until the complete truth is verified, all charges remain suspended." Hilary exhaled slowly, her shoulders easing as if a weight had lifted. It wasn't over yet, but for the first time, the truth had room to breathe. As the session ended, Musk packed up his papers quietly. He didn't stay for interviews. He didn't celebrate. He simply walked out, disappearing into a waiting car. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange. Reporters rushed to deliver their final updates for the day. "The case has turned into an international mystery," one said into the camera. Elon Musk's intervention has changed everything, but Musk wasn't thinking about fame or attention. As the car drove away, he stared out the window deep in. The courtroom lights had dimmed slightly that afternoon as the hearing dragged into another long day. The air was tense, filled with the faint hum of reporters whispering and the clicking of keyboards as updates were sent to the world outside. People could feel that something important was about to happen, something that could change the direction of the entire case. After Elon Musk's unexpected appearance and his bold statement that digital tampering had taken place, everything felt different. The energy in the room had shifted. Even the judge seemed to look at every document with new eyes. Hillary Clinton sat quietly beside her lawyers, her hands folded, her eyes steady, but thoughtful. For the first time in days, she seemed less like someone trapped by accusation and more like a person caught in a storm of confusion. The evidence Musk presented didn't fully clear her, but it cracked open a new possibility, that she had been framed or at least entangled in something larger than herself. Outside the courthouse, crowds had grown larger. Some people held signs calling for justice, others demanded truth. The media vans stretched across the block. News anchors spoke urgently into their microphones, repeating the same phrase over and over. Elon Musk's testimony has turned the case upside down. Inside, Clinton's lead attorney stood to address the court again. His voice was calm but carried a new confidence. He said the evidence Musk presented proved that external actors might have altered digital files. He requested time to allow independent experts to verify the new data Musk shared. The prosecutor didn't object, though he looked uneasy. The judge agreed and called for a short recess. During the break, Musk remained in the hallway surrounded by reporters. His security team kept a small circle around him, but he didn't hide. When asked by journalists why he decided to get involved, his answer was simple. "When technology is used to lie, we all lose," he said. "I didn't come here to protect or attack anyone. I came because truth in data matters." His calm tone struck people deeply. It wasn't dramatic or arrogant. It was straightforward. Many watching live on television felt like they were witnessing not a billionaire defending a politician, but a human being defending fairness. As Musk walked away from the cameras, his mind was already on something else. During his presentation, he noticed a few inconsistencies, technical traces that didn't match the timeline. His intuition told him the tampering wasn't random. Someone had done it carefully, maybe even professionally, to create confusion and cause damage at the right moment. He quietly reached out to 2 cybersecurity specialists from his own companies to dig deeper. They agreed to start immediately. That evening, in a quiet room at his hotel, Musk sat in front of his laptop with encrypted reports coming in from his team. The first findings were already surprising. The network logs pointed to an overseas data route, one that bounced through several countries before reaching a server hosted anonymously. The trail was complex but not impossible to trace. It hinted at an organized effort, possibly a group rather than a single individual. He frowned, realizing this wasn't just about a political case. It was about information being weaponized. Meanwhile, Clinton's lawyers gathered in their office reviewing the new evidence. The room was filled with exhaustion and hope. For days they had been defending against accusations that felt impossible to disprove. Now, for the first time, they had something concrete to work with, proof that data manipulation might have occurred. Clinton herself joined the meeting quietly. She listened more than she spoke, occasionally asking small questions about the technical details Musk had shared. One of her lawyers told her softly, "This could change everything." She nodded, but she didn't smile. She knew that in the world of politics and public opinion, truth often took time to surface. The next morning, new headlines filled every major newspaper. "Cyber evidence points to tampering," one read. "Musk's data shocks legal experts," said another. Some commentators praised him for standing up for integrity. Others accused him of seeking publicity. Social media exploded with debate. Some believed this was proof Clinton had been unfairly targeted. Others insisted it was another distraction. But one thing was certain, the case was no longer simple. Back in court, the judge called the hearing to order. Musk's technical team was invited to provide an update, along with the government's own digital forensics department. Both sides presented findings that seemed to agree on one key point. The data had indeed been accessed and modified by an unknown source. The timestamps didn't match the official records. Even the metadata showed inconsistencies, suggesting that someone had entered the system using stolen credentials. The courtroom was silent as the judge processed this. He turned toward the prosecutor and asked if there was any explanation for how such irregularities were missed in the initial investigation. The prosecutor hesitated, fumbling through his papers, clearly unprepared for the question. The silence that followed felt heavy. Elon Musk sat at the back, observing quietly. He didn't look smug or triumphant. He looked focused. In his mind, this wasn't about winning or losing. It was about understanding who had done this and why. Later that day, when the hearing adjourned, Musk met privately with a small group of cybersecurity analysts. They showed him a clearer path of the data trail. It pointed to a coordinated group operating behind layers of anonymity. The activity logs revealed strange patterns, like automated bursts of data alteration at odd hours, all synchronized. One of the analysts looked up and said, "Whoever did this wanted it to look like her system was guilty, but only enough to spark controversy, not to completely destroy her." That comment stayed with Musk. It made sense. The goal might not have been to prove guilt, but to create public confusion, to make people doubt everything. That was far more dangerous than a simple hack. A few days later, the judge announced a temporary pause in proceedings to allow further investigation. The crowd outside cheered and booed at the same time, their voices mixing into one restless noise. Clinton stepped outside the courthouse and made a short statement to the press. She thanked the court for giving her a fair chance and said she trusted the process. Her tone was calm but firm. She didn't mention Musk by name, though everyone knew his actions had changed everything. That evening, Musk was invited for an interview on a major news channel. Sitting under the bright studio lights, he spoke plainly. "Technology has power," he said. "But power without honesty can destroy trust. What happened here isn't about one person. It's about how easy it has become to rewrite reality with digital tools." His words spread widely online. People shared clips of the interview, calling it one of the most honest statements in years. Meanwhile, the investigation Musk had started quietly was expanding. With the help of independent experts, they tracked the data trail to a network suspected of spreading misinformation during elections in multiple countries. It was a complex operation involving fake servers and stolen credentials. The details weren't public yet, but they painted a disturbing picture. Clinton's team submitted the findings to the court as supplemental evidence. The judge reviewed the documents carefully. He knew this wasn't just about a single case anymore. It was about setting a precedent for how truth could be verified in the digital age. In the days that followed, tension eased slightly. The tone in the courtroom became more analytical, less emotional. The lawyers focused on facts rather than speculation. Even the public mood began to shift. People who had been certain of guilt now paused to reconsider. Others who had lost faith in justice started to feel that fairness might still be possible. Musk kept a low profile during this time. He didn't attend every session, but his presence lingered over the proceedings. Whenever his name was mentioned, there was a ripple of reaction from the crowd. Some saw him as a hero, others as a disruptor, but no one could deny he had brought light into a dark and confusing case. One afternoon, as the judge reviewed new digital forensics reports, he made a statement that caught everyone's attention. "The credibility of our justice system depends not only on human honesty," he said, "but on technological transparency. If the tools we use to seek truth can be manipulated, then we must find ways to protect them." His words echoed through the courtroom and beyond. Outside, the press interpreted it as a hint that the judge was beginning to see the case in a new light. The speculation grew louder. Would the arrest order stand? Would new suspects be named? Was this the beginning of a wider investigation? Nobody knew for sure. Behind closed doors, Musk's team continued working. One night, they uncovered the final link, an encrypted email that connected the fake server directly to a small company known for its political data operations. It wasn't a large revelation by itself, but it proved intent. Someone had deliberately tried to distort evidence for personal or political gain. When Musk saw the final report, he exhaled slowly. "This needs to go to the court," he said. His team agreed. The next morning, they submitted the findings through official channels without media involvement. Musk wanted the truth to be handled carefully, not sensationalized. As the hearing resumed days later, the judge acknowledged the new submission and commended the technical precision of the report. He ordered a full review of how the digital records had been handled from the beginning. The prosecutor had little to say. The case will. The day of the final hearing arrived with a mixture of tension and anticipation. The courthouse steps were crowded again, but this time the atmosphere was different. People weren't just waiting for news, they were waiting for clarity. Every camera, every reporter, every observer wanted to see how the case would conclude after days of revelations. Surprises and extraordinary twists. Inside the courtroom, Hillary Clinton arrived early, escorted by her legal team. She walked with measured steps, her face calm but her eyes reflecting the intensity of the past weeks. The previous sessions had been exhausting, filled with unexpected technical discoveries and dramatic revelations, but she seemed determined. Today, she wouldn't just react. She would be present, fully attentive to every detail. Elon Musk entered shortly after her, his presence already making waves. He didn't seek attention, didn't wave to reporters, and didn't speak to anyone in the crowd. He simply walked in, carrying a small folder, and took a seat near the back of the courtroom. His expression was neutral, almost serene, but everyone knew that he had played a key role in the proceedings. His analysis of the tampered data had shifted the direction of the case entirely. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. The gavel struck sharp and commanding as he called the session to order. He acknowledged the extraordinary events of the past weeks, mentioning the involvement of independent technical experts and the unusual discovery of evidence tampering. His words made it clear that this hearing would focus not only on the original accusations, but also on the integrity of the entire process. Hillary's lawyer stood first. He calmly summarized the events of the past days, emphasizing the inconsistencies in the evidence initially presented and highlighting the findings revealed by Musk and his team. He spoke of the tampered digital files, the international server routes, and the professional precision of the manipulation. He argued that the evidence originally used against Clinton could not be trusted, given the clear signs of alteration. The prosecutor rose immediately, attempting to maintain his position. He argued that despite the tampering, some of the files still originated from Clinton's private servers. He suggested that, at minimum, this meant she could not be entirely cleared. His tone was firm, but his confidence was noticeably shaken. The courtroom sensed it. He was trying to hold on to a narrative that was slipping from his grasp. Then Musk was invited to the stand. He rose quietly, approached the microphone, and began explaining his findings in simple, clear terms. His voice was calm but authoritative. He described how digital fingerprints work, how data manipulation leaves invisible traces, and how his team had tracked the tampered files to a network operating outside the United States. He explained that while some files had originated from Clinton's servers, they had been altered after leaving those systems. As he spoke, the room leaned in. Even those who didn't understand the technical details could feel the weight of what he was saying. He wasn't speculating or accusing anyone directly. He was presenting facts. He said that the files had been altered to create a misleading narrative, but the original digital trail could be reconstructed to reveal the truth. The judge listened carefully, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Musk answered each calmly, never raising his voice or showing frustration. He described the evidence step by step, explaining how the manipulation was designed to look authentic and deceive investigators. He emphasized that the timing, method, and precision of the tampering pointed to a coordinated operation rather than a random mistake. After Musk finished, the courtroom seemed to hold its breath. The prosecutor had little left to argue, and even his team looked unsure. The judge paused, scanning the documents before him, his expression serious but contemplative. For the first time, it felt like the courtroom itself was waiting for something decisive, something that would finally tip the balance. Hillary sat quietly, hands folded. She didn't show relief or tension, she just watched and listened. After weeks of uncertainty, she was seeing a new kind of clarity. This wasn't about political bias or public opinion. It was about facts. And for the first time in this long ordeal, the facts were beginning to tell a coherent story. The judge spoke next. Based on the evidence presented, including the detailed analysis by independent technical experts and Mr. Musk's team, this court recognizes that a portion of the evidence initially used against Ms. Clinton was altered after its creation. His voice was deliberate, measured, and every word carried weight. He continued, "The tampering appears to have been done professionally, with intent to mislead. While some data originated from private servers, the alterations significantly distort the context, rendering the original files unreliable for the purpose of legal judgment." There was a quiet murmur in the courtroom. Reporters exchanged glances, scribbled notes, and adjusted their cameras. The prosecutor's team looked stunned, while Clinton's lawyers allowed themselves a small, quiet nod of satisfaction. Hilary herself remained composed, her face serene, though those watching closely could see a subtle easing of tension around her eyes and jaw. The judge paused for a moment, then addressed the court with gravity. Given these findings, the court is compelled to suspend any consideration of charges based solely on the compromised evidence. Further investigation will focus on identifying those responsible for the tampering. Ms. Clinton, you are no longer the subject of any active charges in this matter at this time. A soft sigh of relief seemed to ripple through the courtroom. Even reporters paused, taking in the gravity of what had just been said. Outside, the crowd began to react with cheers, applause, and waves of excitement. News vans transmitted the announcement live, and headlines across the nation began to appear almost immediately. Clinton cleared amid digital evidence tampering. Elon Musk's analysis exposes data manipulation. Justice prevails after cyber interference revealed. Hilary's lawyers rose to thank the court, acknowledging Musk's crucial role. Clinton herself stood quietly, looking at the judge with respect. She then turned briefly to Musk, giving him a subtle nod of gratitude. Musk, still calm and composed, returned the gesture, his face unreadable but his presence having made an undeniable difference. The hearing concluded with the judge ordering a full investigation into the source of the tampered data. This investigation would involve both domestic and international experts, cybersecurity specialists, and law enforcement agencies. It was clear that while Clinton had been cleared of charges, the larger issue of manipulated digital evidence had just begun. Outside the courthouse, the energy was electric. News anchors reported live from every corner, summarizing the courtroom events, explaining the technical discoveries, and speculating on the implications. People debated in coffee shops, online forums, and social media platforms. The case had transformed from a political scandal into a lesson about the power and danger of digital technology in shaping reality. Clinton exited the courthouse quietly, surrounded by her security team. She didn't speak immediately, allowing the crowd and reporters to settle. Later, she gave a short statement. "I am grateful for the careful review of facts in this matter. The process has been long and difficult, but today we see that truth, even when obscured, can be uncovered. I hope this serves as a reminder that justice must always be based on evidence and honesty." Musk, meanwhile, left without fanfare. He did not speak to the reporters gathered outside, nor did he make any statements on social media. His job, he seemed to feel, was done. His focus had always been on clarity, accuracy, and truth, not fame or recognition. But the world would remember his role in this case as pivotal. Later that night, Clinton sat in her private office reflecting on the past weeks. The tension, the uncertainty, the fear of public judgment, it all felt surreal now. She realized that the world had changed dramatically in how it perceives information. Facts could no longer be taken at face value. Digital evidence, though powerful, could be twisted, altered, or weaponized. And yet she felt a cautious optimism. In the end, the truth had emerged. Meanwhile, in a quiet location elsewhere, Musk reviewed the final reports his team had compiled. The data trails, the server paths, the hidden fingerprints, all of it was documented for law enforcement and future reference. He wasn't concerned with praise or recognition. What mattered to him was that the information was accurate and preserved. He knew that in a world increasingly dominated by digital networks, integrity in information was as important as any legal judgment. Over the next few days, news coverage of the case continued, but the focus began to shift. Analysts discussed the implications of tampered data, the responsibilities of those handling sensitive digital information, and the lessons learned about cyber integrity. People debated how courts should handle technical evidence and what safeguards were necessary to prevent manipulation in the future. Musk's quiet intervention became a case study in how expert analysis could safeguard truth. For Clinton, life slowly returned to a semblance of normality. She resumed her routine, though the experience had left a mark. She remained committed to public service and advocacy, but she now had a deeper understanding of the fragility of trust in a digital world. The ordeal had been exhausting, frightening, and humbling, but ultimately it reinforced her belief in the importance of